Hi, besties and bosses. How you doing? I think I'm gonna sing. I'm not a singer, but apparently that's how we're starting lives now. I think I'm like extra hopped up today because I did a live with my good girlfriend Leah, who's a seven-figure business owner. We're talking all about what we wish every entrepreneur knew about business coaching and building wealth over on Instagram earlier this morning. So I've already had like the fun of being live and getting to do that with a friend. So I think I'm just like it's not even caffeine today, y'all, and it's not even spring. I put on a dress for you, not that you can tell, but I'm totally wearing a dress, and I was joking on that live stream. I'm in New York City. It's so much warmer than I expected. I guess we're actually going to spring. I think it's like in the mid 50s, 60s, so I'm like really sweating. But I put on a dress anyway. I felt like it was that kind of a day. So got the puffy sleeves for you, got the dress. That's what's going on here. Anyway, we've got lots of good things to talk about today. Today I'm going to dive in. Let me actually pull this up in the Facebook group because otherwise I do not see when you're live. And we've got giveaways if you're live, and I would love to know if you're live. We are going to dive into what your content needs to position you as a go-to expert in your industry. There we go, I can see myself. So let me know if you're here. Actually, let me know if you're here. We're doing a giveaway. We don't always do a giveaway, but I like doing giveaways. And I have something a little different that we haven't given away before, which is one person. If you just say live, let me know you're here. Drop me an emoji. Now, anytime during the live, we will pick a winner, and we're going to give away one copy of the bonus playbook that I have for a six-figure content strategy that is full of content and copy props that I literally use myself and I give to my VIP, my one-on-one clients. So one person will get that. All you got to do is let me know you're here. I like to bribe you to join me because I also like you to be a part of the conversation. It makes it so much more fun for me. Plus, then I know what questions you have. So as we're going through this, if you have questions, if you want me to go over something more in depth, let me know. Because this one in particular, shameless plug here, as many of you probably know, I opened up or created a brand new coaching intensive, Your Marketing Multiplied Strategy Intensive. I am obsessed with it. I'm always obsessed with my intensives. I love them as much. I love my one-on-one ongoing containers the most, obviously, because it's where we get to dive in, but I'm just blown away by how much we can do in a really short, focused period of time. This is a week-long intensive where we're really diving into your marketing, your words that sell, as well as your positioning and your marketing strategy, so you know how to position yourself as the go-to expert in your industry and really what to pay attention to and speak to. So you're not only getting visible, but you're getting visible and building the kinds of relationships that turn into clients and turn into the types of leads and clients that when they get on a call with you, when they land on your sales page, they're like, you are the person I want to work with, because it is loud right now. It is saturated. It's not to create a story. It's just the truth. It is 2024, not 2020. I'm sure you're hearing everybody talk about this in the online space, but it is simply the truth and just such a need I see right now in particular, which is why I created the intensive. And I did like 5 last month. We opened up my Fridays to do more of them, and it's just been really great to dive in and to see how even for business owners who I had a couple of multi-six-figure business owners book these, how even at that stage where it's like your messaging, your marketing strategy, it's not like you don't get that, how really digging into some of these specific tweaks are really change the way you're positioning yourself and allowing yourself to get noticed, known, and honestly paid on a higher level, and how essential that is right now. I feel like I'm on such a soapbox around this, but I want to preface why I'm having this conversation with you today, because what we're going to dig into are a couple things I've noticed come up on the intensives and with my one-on-one clients as well that I'm just seeing as sort of like the work everybody, honestly, I hate saying the word needs, but really that I believe people need to be focused on if you want to stay relevant and have your business sustain or scale this year and moving forward. And this is not to create a doomsday conversation or to make anyone freak out, but I think the two things are true. This is something I was talking about with Leah over on Instagram. I think there's this thing in which we forget sometimes you can be the best at what you do. You can be super talented, but if no one can see you, if no one can hear you, if no one knows what it is you do, and if no one understands why you're the right person for them, right? It doesn't matter how great you are at what you do, right? Like you're just gonna have that disconnect, and you can have the best mindset in the world and the best, offer in the world, but we need this other piece. Otherwise, it's why I'm obsessed with marketing. I'm obsessed with marketing because I know that's what gets you paid. I was saying to Leah on our live as well, you have to let me know if y'all relate to this. I've probably shared this before, but I spent 10 years acting in LA, as many of you know. And what I really saw to be true there is it didn't matter how talented you were, right? Everybody was talented there. Not everybody, but there were a lot of people. like our industry was unregulated, so there are a lot of people who weren't. But you couldn't work as an actor or actress if you weren't getting in the room and you didn't have an opportunity to showcase your talent, right? Like at the end of the day, if you weren't getting auditions, if you weren't getting seen, it didn't matter how much you studied, it didn't matter how much you honed your craft, you weren't going to get paid as an actor or actress. It's the same for us here, which is why I'm so obsessed with this, because I know I work with people who are brilliant at what they do. I know you're great at what you do, but if we don't know how to message that, how to position that, how to market that, how to get you not just showing up posting, but posting in a way that actually gets seen, because it is loud and busy and saturated and gets noticed and connects with your people to convert into sales, right? We just are going to have a really tough time in business. I feel like I'm like super fired up around this because of that, but I also just see what a difference it makes. Have seen what a difference it makes in my business. I feel like I was like what did my mastermind friend say to me once, that I used to be like the best kept secret or something in the industry, and that's not a compliment, right? I love them for saying that, but that's not a compliment when someone's like, you're the best kept secret in the industry. We don't want you to be a best kept secret. Anyways, that's why we're diving into this today. These are things we've talked about here. I talked about this in the 20K multiplied masterclass, 20K months multiplied masterclass, which by the way, my team made evergreen for you. So I will drop a link to that after this class, where we're walking through the 5 components you need to sustainably scale your business. I think it's my best masterclass I've ever done. I've had people just reach out and tell me how much they got from it, and literally like all the notes they took and the way it's really supported them. So I will drop a link to that so you have access. But we've talked about these concepts, but I want to workshop them a little bit more and just really dive into, again, what I've just noticed on these intensives, because I think this is the place everyone needs the most support. So I'm just going to pull up my notes, because I do have some notes here. And again, as I'm going through this, please let me know questions if you want me to explain something differently, because I want you to walk away from this. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as if we have a one-on-one intensive together, one-on-one time where I can actually look at your strategy and help pull this out of you. But I want you to feel like you know now what to go. Take a look at your content, take a look at your marketing strategy, and you know what to adjust. And if you're already getting great reach and great results, this is going to help you just to tighten it up a little bit more to amplify those results. If you feel like you've just been posting every day, or you don't know what to post, right? Either way, and you're not getting the results you want, I'm hoping this will help you walk away with some really specific shifts you can make without having to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to talk through 3 different pieces today, and we'll see how far we can get. But I want to talk about the how of using strategic vulnerability. I want to just touch on what thought leadership actually means for you, what it is and what it isn't. And then I want to walk you through some actual examples of what it means to be more specific in your content, because this is probably the biggest note I give clients when I'm editing their content. And I think it's one of those things, I will raise my hand. Like I am absolutely guilty of this as well. I think we all think we're being far more specific than we are, not because you suck at creating content, because we're all so close to our work. We have the full picture, right? We know all of the details. And so I think we sometimes don't realize that people on the other side don't have the same details. And I think that's where sometimes we can get a little bit more generic. And so I really want to workshop that piece with you. So let me pull up my notes. Let's talk the how of using strategic vulnerability to not only stand out, but to do this in a way that creates that deeper connection point and that emotional connection and that trust that leads to sales. Something I think is important to remember is that people buy for emotional reasons and they fill that decision in with logic. And I know y'all know this, like we talk about this all the time, but I think sometimes we don't exactly understand what that means or how to apply that to our messaging, to our marketing strategy. And this is one way to do that. And I think what gets really confused is if we just say be more vulnerable or expose yourself or share like your truth. I think that can be very confusing, because I think then we don't know how to do so in a way that positions you as an expert, as an authority, as the go-to, as the person. Because I don't want you just to be an expert in your field. I want you to be the person that for your right fit client, they are like you are the only person I want to buy from. You're the person I want to hire, so that yeah, of course, like you're gonna have a sales conversation, you're gonna have a landing page or whatever it is you need to sell, but it just will, so that your marketing does the heavy lift for you when someone comes to that. And so this is one way that Oh, no, that's a comment on a post, not a comment. I'm getting like comments popping up in my face, but that was a comment to a post, not to this conversation here. But strategic vulnerability, if you haven't heard that term before, it's because I made it up. But I made it up because I think this is the type of vulnerability that changes the game for you in content. And this is something I've given quite a few notes and helped quite a few people on intensives really drill into and to understand. And so let's talk about the how about this a little bit. I think what we want to remember with strategic vulnerability, I think you all know what vulnerability is and you understand like what it means to be vulnerable in your content. I think so often where this can be detrimental is what I see is, and this isn't to shame anyone at all or to say anyone's doing anything wrong, but I see a lot of times that people are being vulnerable, but there's zero strategic element to it. And there's nothing about the vulnerability that is doing anything to help someone understand why you are the person that can help them solve their problem or get the result they want or to meet their desire, and why you're actually an expert in what you do. In some cases, I really see people share vulnerably, and I think it can be quite detrimental to a brand and to that brand identity and that reputation and that relationship, and it can actually do the opposite. Sometimes I think people almost like use the online space as sort of like a journal or as a place to like get attention, but I think we have to remember attention is not necessarily the thing you're looking for. I mean, attention's great, but I don't want you just to get attention. I want you to get known for being an expert at what you do, right? There's a big difference there. If I think about kids, right? Like little kids can do a lot to get attention. That doesn't mean it's positive attention or it's the attention that, they ultimately want. It's just sometimes kids will act out because that's the only way they know how to get attention. I think that's what can happen sometimes with vulnerability. And so I really want to invite you to think about, yes, vulnerability can be very strategic and this can almost sound manipulative, but this isn't meant to be manipulative. Again, it's coming back to what we're doing as business owners is we're also marketers, and to get noticed in a very saturated space and to build the type of know, like, and trust that turns into a sale, we do need to create a deeper connection. We do need to create some of that emotionality, because emotionality is what drives those results. And what I like to really think about with strategic vulnerability is not just like how can you bare your soul, sorry, dropping chords here, not just how can you bare your soul or tell people your deepest, darkest secrets, right? In many cases, that isn't going to support your business or your marketing at all, but it's more how can you connect with your person and say, I get you, I see you, I feel you, I've been you, and I have the knowledge, the expertise, the wisdom, the offer, the solution, because I've been where you're at, because I understand where you're at, because I can emotionally connect with you, right? Because I can just reach out my hand and say, I just see you in such a different way, right? Don't we all want to be seen, heard, and understood, right? How can we use our content and our vulnerability in that way? And then use it also as a vehicle to strategically showcase, but this is something I've overcome, but this is something I've worked through, but this is something I have a great tool for, but this is something I'm now on the other side of, but this is something because of this, right? It's the obstacle is the way. Because of this obstacle, I've become stronger. I can inspire you to see what's possible for you. This is how we turn vulnerability into a strategic way to connect with our audience, as opposed to just like spewing things from the heart because we're feeling it. And what I want you to remember with marketing is your marketing isn't about you, it's about your audience, right? It's about how you can build a connection with them to really serve them, to help get their needs met, to help teach them why you, to help them teach you why your offer, to support them to solve their problems or to get those desires. And I think that's when we're looking at strategic vulnerability. When you're sharing something vulnerable, are you sharing it for you because it feels good for you to share? Because you want a response? If so, it's probably not the thing to share in your content. Or are you sharing something because there's a strategic benefit to your audience, to your marketing to share this, and it is a way to connect? It happens to be a little vulnerable to share. Let me know if that difference is making sense there. I know on my podcast I shared a question, which is, what's the thing you don't want people to know as it relates to you and your work, I think was the question. And it's a question I'll ask myself, but I think some people misheard that as almost like, what's the thing I feel shameful about that I don't want people to know? And I really want you to think more about like, what are some of the like personal, more vulnerable details of your journey or of the work you do that like, if we're just teaching like some how-to educational content, it would just feel a lot safer not to share. Or if we're kind of getting stuck in that, I think this is the kind of content that's not working right now, is the super like, let me just prove to you and try to show you how I know everything, how I'm perfect, how I'm super polished. I think we're really in a season in our industry, in the marketplace, where people are craving realness. And I think it makes sense, right? AI is giving us the opposite. I think people really want to know, are you real? Are you for real? Are you a human, right? Have you been through this yourself? I think we have a lot of, mistrust still from people who have just consumed something and not lived that as well and are just kind of regurgitating. I think people really are craving to know, are you who you say you are? And are just really wanting that realness, that personalization, not the perfectly polished, rendition of something. There's what's the term? There's actually a term in the film world for cartoons, and cartoons that seem too real-like and human-like. So I think they have the technology to do that. Our human brains are actually kind of revolted by it and don't want to watch that. It's why even when you see really great, and I wish I could think of the term. If anybody knows the term, drop it for me. But basically, even though they have the technology for that, if we were to watch something where the AI, the computer generated images of people is too lifelike, it actually it kicks up a response in us. And it makes sense, right? We're humans. We're like wired to survive, not to thrive. Like, I think that does some really weird, fucked up things to our brain. So it's kind of the same thing in our marketing, not to go too far off a tangent, that we really want to be thinking about with strategic vulnerability. And so I would be thinking about this in terms of the how, less like what's the thing you're ashamed of, or that makes you feel bad, or that like you think is embarrassing. Like, I would stay out of that realm and think more about like what are the personal, like the things where it's like it's close to your heart, or it does feel a little bit like you're exposing yourself to share. Like, what are your honest, unfiltered thoughts? Or maybe the thing that you're like so-called embarrassed, like your past self might have been embarrassed by because it doesn't seem perfectly polished, but it's just the real experience you've had that you're on the other side of, that is a way you can relate to your people. That's more how I would be thinking about the strategic vulnerability piece. One of the things I think about is more just literally what's my unfiltered truth. Like, if I were just to take the thoughts from my brain about whatever it is I'm going to talk about, what would I say? And that's something I will bring to a lot. I'll give you an example and a little bit. And what that does is it takes you past, again, only educational content where it's just like, here's the how-to of something. It's more, this is also coming to the thought leadership piece, like, here's my unfiltered truth around this. The other way I think about this that I think can be really strategic is thinking about, what did you have to overcome? What was your reality? What were some of the things that maybe you're like, oh, like, this isn't the perfect polished version of me, but now these are the very things I've had to overcome that have made me an expert in what I do. How can you speak to some of that? And here's why I think this is really strategic. I think what this does is it dismantles some of that proving energy that I don't think is very supportive in marketing at all. I don't think any of us really love to consume or connect with people who are just like trying to prove and show they're perfect. I think we can see that from a mile away. And I think it also helps move into more of what is working right now, which is bringing in more of that personalization, which is showing more of that realness. But it's really strategic because when you do this, what you're also showing is, hey, look at me, I've walked my talk. Hey, look, I've been where you're at, right? So you're building that emotional bond and connection because you're sharing something that you're saying, like, I get you, I see you, I am you, not I'm just like up here on a pedestal and I'm not a human and I'm a robot that's never experienced any of these things, right? Think about the content you love to consume. I bet you love this stuff where it's like, oh, I feel just like them. It's it's a People magazine where they have that section where it's like celebrities, they're just like us, and it's like they try to get like snapshots of them doing everyday life things because they're still human, right? But we love that. We love to be like, oh my God, that super successful celebrity who made $1 gazillion is on the big screen. They're just like us. Any of you watched the Oscars and saw Emma Stone win her award, her dress ripped, right? And how much did we all fall in love with her a little bit more, right? This is strategic vulnerability. When she was like, y'all, my dress ripped before going into her speech, she just did this beautiful thing of like, here she is, she's clearly the top of her field, right? She's not diminishing her work through her vulnerability. She's not downplaying herself through her vulnerability. She's not saying, hey, this vulnerability I'm sharing is making me incapable of doing my work. She's showing, hey, I'm a human. Even in this huge moment, this is happening. And look at me here, still accepting one of the most prestigious awards. That's strategic vulnerability. And so when you can find those elements of like some of those obstacles you have had to overcome, maybe some of the things that like aren't your proudest, shiniest moments that you're on the other side of, and you can connect the dots to the lesson learned, how you're walking your talk, how the work you sell is a result of that or something that supported you to get to the other side. That's strategic vulnerability, because that is super strategic. You're building that connection point, right? You're letting your people fall in love with you a little bit more. You're letting your people see you and your heart, not just like the facade, but you're also really showing up as the expert, as someone who, and I think that also builds a lot of trust in saying like, hey, I've been rocked in this way. My work is so powerful that I'm on the other side of it, because that's how well it worked. Like, and I can now facilitate support using what's helped me, even though I used to be there. Let me know if that makes sense, or if you have a question. I will pull up an example at the end. I'm going to pull up a post that I wrote I'm just pulling up one of my own because I want to protect my client's confidentiality, obviously, and otherwise I would pull up client examples. But I'm going to pull up a reel that I did on Instagram that got a little over 34,000 views, which for my account, I think that's like the second highest we've ever gotten. We don't usually get that many views. We usually hover around between like 2,000 to 5,000. So it's an outlier, but I think it's speaking to the strategic vulnerability piece. It has that piece in there. So I'll use that as an example. And it also has what I want to show you in terms of some of the specifics coming up. Right. So I don't see any questions, but if you do have questions, drop them for me. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next part. The last thing I wanted to say here. So with strategic vulnerability, the other piece I want you to think about is, because I want this to be for you, right? This is really meant to be strategic and a part of how to position yourself as an expert in your content. So I want you to keep that top of mind. So when you're sharing your vulnerabilities, right, I really want this to be from a place of how are you taking responsibility to own, to control that narrative, and to share in a way that really does allow you to highlight why you're great at what you do, or what you want people to know about you, your brand story, your journey. Not as like, if it feels like, oh, I'm still processing this, I just want attention, or I'm just sharing this because I feel like this is vulnerable and that's going to connect me to humans, right? It will connect you to humans, but I really want you to keep coming from that lens first, like the top filter of how am I sharing this in a way that really helps position me as someone who is an expert at what I do, as someone who, like, this is an example of, or this helps someone understand why I'm an expert, or that I'm sharing something outside of my realm of expertise to help bring in some of that humanity and that personalization. I think that's another way to bring in strategic vulnerability. I've seen a lot of this recently online, and I've seen some people do it really well. And I've seen my coach do it really well as an example. But just some of those things where you're like, hey, I am great at what I do, right? Like, these aren't maybe the place you have an expertise in your business. You don't have a lot of vulnerabilities around that because maybe it comes naturally to you or easily to you, and that's why you're supporting people with that or selling that offer, but you're still a human. What are some of the more vulnerable aspects to your life you can bring in to your content to help show that human side of you as a way to build that connection? We just love that about people, right? Like, you know, is there a struggle you're having as a parent? Is there a struggle you're having in your relationship in the way that feels, you know, okay to share? But I think these are the pieces that can also be really strategically vulnerable. And so you can think outside the box as well. If it doesn't come up for you in your work, what are some of those other pieces that you might want to share that can, again, build that connection? And with strategic vulnerability, everyone always thinks vulnerability means like the hard, bad stuff. Don't forget, for so many people, for so many of my clients, what is the most vulnerable is sharing the good stuff, is sharing the success they've created, the money they've made, the wins they've had, the clients they've helped, right? The great life they've built. I think that can be some of the most vulnerable stuff to share. I know for me, that is definitely, it is way easier for me to talk about my trauma and all the challenges I've had to overcome in business. I will pour my heart out on that. Talking about the good stuff is a whole different edge. So I just want you to remember that with strategic vulnerability. It's not always just like what's dark and in the like gloomy side of things. It might also be like what's really great in your life that you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable around and share, that you're just trying to, like almost like keep that wall up and like just stay in a lane of like, here's some how-to content, here's some tips content, right? That kind of content just isn't going to build that emotional bridge in 2024. Okay, I want to make sure we have time to hit these next two pieces. The thought leadership piece, because this came up quite a bit because this is what we're working on in the intensive, and also this is what came up in 20K Months Multiplied. I'm just going to touch on this briefly because I want to spend the rest of our time on the specificity piece here. I'm just seeing here, no questions. So with thought leadership driven messaging, what it is and isn't, and I just want us to think about this. What I think about when I think about thought leadership driven messaging is it's really having an opinion based on your experience and your expertise in your industry. Like, and it's almost that simple, and being willing to go first. And the reason this is so powerful and that it positions you as a go-to expert is it is saturated right now, and most people are just regurgitating more of the same or regurgitating the things they've heard from other people. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like there's also like, I'm a business coach, right? Like there are just certain things in business that are fundamentally the truth that all business coaches are going to talk about if we're helping people to grow, build, grow, and scale businesses, right? There's just going to be certain fundamental truths that all business coaches are going to talk about. But the way I can really position myself as a go-to expert, the way I can say like, hey, I'm not just someone who showed up yesterday, and I have been around the block, and I have been on thousands and thousands of calls and supported 28 clients to 10K months, 16 clients to 6 figures, 3 clients to $1 million plus, and a very small one-on-one roster with a little turnover, is to bring in what I'm noticing in my own business, what I'm noticing from my clients, what I'm noticing in my own industry, what I'm seeing to be true, that it goes past just kind of like what the generic skill set I need to have as a business coach. And the more I can bring in, hey, this is my lived experience. This is what I really see after 8 years in business. This is what I'm seeing in 2024, right? Some of that is my thought leadership because I'm on so many sessions with clients one-on-one. I see behind the scenes of their business, and I'm seeing what's true for them, or I've had all these intensives, right? What I'm talking about here in many ways is thought leadership driven messaging, because this isn't something that I learned from a webinar or that I learned from my coach or that I learned. This is all something I've learned from my own business and from my own work and from being in the trenches with my clients and in my own business. And so that's what I want to invite you to think about, and not to make it more complicated or harder than it needs to be. And if you're brand new to business, right, this might not be the place to start. This might be something you live into the longer you're in your industry, but especially for those of you who have been in business a little bit longer, there's such an opportunity here, and there's such a way to differentiate in the marketplace and to stand out without trying to be different for the sake of being different, or without having to be super innovative. If you are, that's great. But I think sometimes with thought leadership driven messaging, I think we have to reinvent the wheel or be super innovative. Or I think just even when we think about blue ocean strategy and creating that new space for ourselves, I know my brain goes to that. I'm always thinking like, man, unless I like create a brand new framework or something like has never been done before, I can't help people to see what my thought leadership is or why I'm different. And I think that's honestly a lot of pressure. I know that's a way I've tripped myself up in the past. I think I've made it, here's my strategic vulnerability. I've made it so much harder on myself in business because I put a lot of pressure on needing to like almost reinvent the wheel and find all new ways for everything so that I can seem different, as opposed to seeing it can be as simple as, because I'm doing this work all day, every day, because I'm in the industry, because I'm good at what I do, because I have success and I'm helping clients to do the same, I just have a different lens and vantage point than someone who's new to the industry, or than someone who hires me, or someone that has a different business model. And so how can I just be willing to observe, to pay attention to think about what it is I'm noticing because I'm in that world, and how can I then be willing to speak to that and to share that first before. And not like there's a rush to share it first, but I mean to go first and to share that before someone else has created a class on like why this is the thing to share. And so that's what I would invite you with thought leadership driven messaging, to think about it that way. And what this really asks you to do is to take a moment to pause, or to do a coaching intensive with me, or to work with your coach to actually observe what it is you're noticing in your business, through your clients, through your industry, that is maybe slightly different, that you do have an opinion about, that you do have a thought about, and to really allow yourself to make those connections. And sometimes this means taking a little time to stop and think, and to also be willing to, sometimes there's some mindset work around this, right? To be willing to be brave enough to maybe say the thing that isn't popular, or to say the thing that maybe everyone doesn't want to hear, or that, everybody is saying something different. But this is so powerful for your content, because this does, again, really help position you as a go-to expert. And it's also helping differentiate you from people who are in the industry who are all saying pretty much the same thing. Okay, hopefully that, I just wanted to touch on that briefly because I think there was a little confusion around that. And if you have questions, we can talk about that more. But I really want it to be clear. I'm all for frameworks, but this isn't now pressure to, you now need to create a new framework for every idea you have, or a whole new innovative idea, or to do something like have a completely different business model. Use the stuff that's working. This is more, how can you think about, how can you observe your own work, your own process, your own clients, your own business, your own industry, and based on your experience, based on your expertise, how can you form opinions you're willing to share, and to let it be that simple. Okay, this is the big one. I'm glad we have a little time for this. Specificity. So I want to give you some specific examples of what it looks like to get more specific. I know we did a whole live stream around this. I've talked about this, but this is something that I think we need to revisit, and I wanted to just give you a couple more examples, because this is the number one thing that I am supporting clients with in their content right now. It is also the number one thing I'm seeing make a shift in my content. I have been creating content every day for 8 years, pretty much every day. In my business, obviously we batch, it's not like I'm creating it every day, but you know what I mean, I'm putting it out every day. I think I'm quite skilled. I think content comes to me very easily. I'm quite skilled at it. But I've really, for the past year and a half, I've shared this so many times, last November, so not November of 2022, I started to see a shift in the industry. January of 2023, I really started to see a dip in my content reach. And I have just been studying the shit out of this since, and really focusing on, what's working today, what's working right now, what's getting reach, what's not getting reach. And I just think I don't just think, I just know, I've seen, I have the data to back this up in terms of, we'll use that reel for an example, the reel that got 34,000 views. Not that it's about views, and I don't even think that's maybe the best metric to measure, but it is a metric we can look at. I can really look at, what are the difference makers? What is, pushing those levers? Strategic vulnerability is one of them. Storytelling is one of them. But a big driver is the specificity, and that's so much of what I've been helping people with in Your Marketing Multiplied and that Strategy Intensive. Because here's the thing, everyone thinks they're being more specific than they are because of what we were talking about at the beginning of this live stream. It's just because we have the full picture knowledge. I always have thought I've been more specific than I am, and I forever have more opportunities to be specific in my own content, right? And especially if I'm being not lazy, but just a little bit more like, I just need to get this content done. I'm not being as thoughtful or as intentional with it. I'm always going to be more general. And I think part of the reason for that is it's a muscle to work. But again, I really do think it's when you're so close to your work, and when you are an expert and you have such a breadth of knowledge to something, it's almost like, how do we encompass all of these thoughts in a generalization? And of course, people know all of the context and nuance, so I don't need to share it. But that's what ends up watering our content down. I also really think in 2020, when the online space built up, a couple things were true. I think it was true that it was so much more about how do you just get as much content out there as possible, because there was a need, there was a demand. And I think it was more about volume than quality. Not that the content wasn't good, but I really do think it was like, how can we get out there? How can we be sharing stuff? And I think that was really necessary. I also think most people were completely, there was such a demand. I know I was super overbooked. I know other people who were. So the focus, I know in my business, the focus wasn't on content. Of course, it was how do we keep getting content out, but it wasn't how do we drill into our messaging and up level it, and how do we up level our marketing? How do we get more specific? That would have literally been the wrong thing for me to focus on in my business. It was, how do we keep this engine running so that I can use all of the rest of my attention to focus on all of the clients in front of me? And I think things have just shifted. I'm blessed that I'm still fully booked. I know a lot of people are in a different space right now. And I think overall, again, I do not want to create a doomsday scenario. It's just the truth. It is very saturated in our online space. We had a boom in 2020 and it is just more crowded than it was before. And so with that, there's just a new focus, there's a new need for us to drill into specifics because there are more people, right? So if there's more people, there's more of a need for us to be able to differentiate from everyone else so people understand why you specifically, right? People no longer have one option. They have so many options to choose from. And that's not a bad thing. I keep saying this. Like, I think that's a positive thing. That also means people are way more comfortable investing in the online space. But because of that, right, we do just have to drill into the specifics so someone knows why you are their go-to expert, why you are their person versus someone else. And so in the past, I think, speaking to more general results and general problem solved, it was fine because there weren't as many people to choose from, and that was enough. And honestly, there wasn't as much noise to sift through. People didn't have as short attention spans online, right? So that was doing its job. And that's also, I think, what people were really resonating and speaking to. I know in 2020, if I just wrote a post about the money I made or the money my clients made, or like spoke generally to problems and results, like that's all people needed to hear to be able to make a buying decision, right? To trust me. Things have just shifted, right? Everybody's saying that. If you have thousands and thousands of people all saying the same thing, it's not that isn't good content. It's just, it all starts to sound the same. I mean this, I use this in my content, but raise your hand if you're like, if I hear one more person talk about 5-figure months or 10K months or, $1 million, I'm gonna everybody's saying that. Like, how do I know which person who's saying that to choose from? Now, I want to be mindful here. This doesn't mean if you are someone who speaks to monetary results or whatever it is you're doing that we now stop talking about, that isn't relevant to your messaging and to your marketing. But the opportunity here and how you stand out is drilling into how can you be more specific to the experience you and your clients are having, to what they're going through. And you can use storytelling in this way or just drilling into those specifics, which I'm going to give you an example of, because otherwise I'm just going to keep saying the word specific and that won't mean shit to you. That is the thing that is going to turn your content around. So I pulled up 3 reels of mine. Again, I'm using my content not to be like, ooh, look at me. I will always have room to grow with my content, and not all of my reels do well. Some of them pop, some of them do, less better than others, and it's really great information and data for me, but just because I want to protect my clients' confidentiality. But I'm pulling these up because I think then I can show you a couple of places where I might have said something more generally and what that specific shift is. So let me pull up first here, and I can drop the links if you all want. Which one is this here? So I'm first going to share the reel with you that got a little over 34,000 views. I think one of the reasons for this, quite honestly, is it was both general and that it's general to, this is an experience I think so many people have in business. So in that way, I think it related to a lot of people. And so in this way, I think that's helpful to understand too. That part of this post or reel was not specific at all. It was very general in terms of this is a universal experience, but it was really specific in how I described. What I was basically talking about is how I used to walk around the city, scraping by, I'm reading this here, too stressed about money to buy a cup of coffee. And I still remember the time that I had a meltdown after splurging on 2 lattes and one of those gluten-free chocolate balls because I couldn't afford it. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Those little date chocolate cup balls. And then I wrote, today I am not only able to grab coffee or dinner out any damn day I want, I'm also the breadwinner and support my husband and I in our happy little life in New York City. And I said, friend, keep going. It gets better and easier and it's so worth it. So that was the caption of the reel. And then in the reel, I go on to talk about, what were the lessons to myself, and that the different ways that I, the extra job I picked up to support my business and the different things I did. I'm going to stop for a moment. So you can see here, there's some strategic vulnerability. But with that heading there, I think it would have been really easy just to be like, I used to walk around this city not making money, and now I have a business that's brought in $1.3 million online in the past 5 years, right? That is still specific, but I want you to see can you see how that's okay, there's something interesting there, but how much more specific it was to speak to what was my experience of walking around the city not having money, right? I was literally too stressed to buy a cup of coffee. I actually had a full-on meltdown and a coaching session around buying 2 lattes and a little gluten-free chocolate ball because that was just more money than I had in my checking account, and it just stressed me out beyond anything while I was building my business in a very expensive city, right? Those are very, very specific examples, and they're very I think they're very universal to people. And so in that way, we're building that connection through those specifics. So hopefully you're helping, like that's helping give you an insight into like, that's some strategic vulnerability. That's vulnerable, right? Like I don't necessarily want everyone to know, like I had a meltdown over 5 minutes. I don't actually care if you know, but, or I wouldn't share, but like, right. Like these are some strategic vulnerability pieces, but they're quite specific as opposed to just speaking more to the general thing where it's like, or it's just like, oh, are you stressed about money? Are you having a hard time making money? Are you having a hard time booking clients? Right? Not that that's wrong at all. That's still great content, but can you see how speaking to that experience of is so different? And then in the post itself, with some of the specifics and some of the things I spoke to, again, this is some strategic vulnerability, but it's also things I was really specifically speaking to some of the things I did at that time that I would remind myself. And so one of the things is that I picked up a bar job and I was reminding myself like, you know, why that was helpful and how everything stacked up to get me the results I wanted. But I'm going to read you a couple pieces here because these are very specific as opposed to me just saying like, don't worry, keep showing up. Your strategy will work and invest in yourself and it all works out, right? That's a little bit more general. What I'm saying here is, after making over 1.3 million online, here's where I go back and tell myself, you're not going to miss that cup of coffee you didn't buy. The year you went out to dinner with your friends and said you already ate because you couldn't swing the cost, right? That's very specific. No one remembers and you'll have hundreds of meals out later, many of which you pick up the tab. So that's an example there. If that's a very specific example of what my experience was, but I'm also teaching in there and saying like, hey, like I feel you, I get you if you've been there, but also like I was willing to make some sacrifices to have what I've created now. Then I go on to say the extra bar job you picked up on top of your 9 to 5 to afford investing in your coach, that weird job you had promoting vodka in a random liquor store way out in Brooklyn to help cover rent, those weekends you gave up to skip partying and used to learn your craft and build your practice. They were all worth it and then some. And then I go in, I'm not going to read the whole post to you, but I go in further in terms of like the things I did to shift. But I wanted to read those examples to you there because you can see even where I'm talking about, and again, this makes it sound like I'm just like patting myself on my back for my content, but I just want you to see the examples of the specifics. I could have just very easily said like, all those years you put into your business showing up every day were worth it. But what I got clear on is what was my specific experience of that. My specific experience was very detailed in terms of like, these are specifics, like that random job in Brooklyn, like that weird job I had selling vodka, right? That is quite specific. So I'm going to pull up another post here for you so we're not just like looking at that one whole post, but I'm hoping you're seeing here, like this is how we drill into what's the surface level thing we want to talk to versus what is the specific experience, the specific details, the specific storytelling that can make this connect with another human. And then how can you do this in a way where like this post went on to teach, right? In this post, I'm still teaching. Here are all the things I go on to talk about the very specific things I did to grow this business. Right? I just, instead of saying like, and then I had a strategy, or then I had mindset, strategy, clarity, and action. That's my coaching framework, right? That's great. And I speak to that all the time. But I wanted to get into what does that specifically mean? How did I specifically show up for that? What was my specific experience? Similarly, if I'm writing a piece of content or copy for, you know, speaking to you or someone else, I can just speak to like, do you want to get booked out? Do you want to make 6 figures? Are you having a hard time writing content? Right? There's something to that. But if I can go in here, instead of just saying, are you having a hard time writing content, or is your content not landing, or are you not getting the results on the other side, or does it feel too loud online, right? That's still a little general. It's kind of like what everyone's saying right now. Instead of me really going into what is your specific experience of that, right? Does it feel really super overwhelming because it's taking you over an hour to write a post and then you put it out there and you don't even know if it's landing with people, and it's super frustrating because you used to be able to put stuff out and book clients and now you're starting to wonder if you're even good at what you do, and it's like you're hitting your head against the wall and you're starting to wonder if you're gonna have to pick up a second job. I'm making this up here, right? But those are much more specific examples of what someone might be experiencing that I might want to bring into a post. All right, I'm gonna pull up one more here. Let's see. And then I do have to go because I have a client call. But I want to pull up one more for you. No, that's the same post because there's one more I wrote, and I think this is just another example of being specific where I was essentially talking about, you know, it's a teaching post on how to really drill into the words that are going to support your messaging and marketing. And I think I'm going to read what I actually wrote, but what I could have easily written, and I pulled up a note here for myself, I could have easily just written a post where I was like, here's the strategy I use to get the best market research, or the strategy I use to nail my messaging for consistent 30 and 40K months, right? That's pretty specific. I think that would have been fine. I think that would have performed just fine, but this post performed a little bit better. And I think the reason for it is just listen to the difference in specificity from the strategy I used to get the best market research, or the strategy I use to nail my messaging for consistent 30, 40K months, right? That's great. That is quasi-specific. What I said is confession, the fucked up thing I do as a booked out multi-six-figure business coach to inform my messaging and marketing. And then in the post, I go on to say I silently stalk the comments and complaints of people post on social media about business coaches in the industry. It's effed up because I kind of get a kick out of how absurd some of these complaints are. And then I posted an actual complaint. I put in some empathy there because I get where people are coming from, and reminded y'all that it took me 2.5 years, not months, to make my first 10K month, that I'm not an overnight success. So I understand what it's like to juggle lots of jobs and how frustrating it can be to not get results, because that's what the complaint was. And then I go in to do the teaching, which is essentially talking about how I'm using posts and the comments in them to pull out language to really inform my messaging, to understand what people are going through, to understand what people need to hear from me in my marketing. And so I'd be sharing this as an example because I think you can see the difference in positioning there and just the difference in specificity. Like, isn't it more interesting if you hear someone like dive into like what they actually do and like what their experience are, what they're actually thinking, versus the more it's kind of like this the strategic vulnerability piece, as opposed to just speaking to like more like the polished surface level like general experience of it. And so I wanted you to see those differences because I just see how specific sell, that's always been true, but how it's really making a difference. I think it's honestly even telling the algorithm in a different way who to share your content with, and how just taking that time, right? It is a little bit of the strategic vulnerability piece, but also taking that time to see none of it's wrong if you're speaking to something more general. I'm sure you will see plenty of my content that still does that. But when you take that time to look at what is my lived experience of this? What am I actually thinking about this? What am I actually doing day to day when I'm talking about this concept? What is my thought process? What are like the specific words I'm using? How can I just drill into more of the vulnerability, more of the story, and to spell that out so that instead of speaking to the concept of something, or instead of teaching the how to, or instead of presenting the like super polished version of something, I'm really drilling into what that specific experience is. That's when we get the emotional connection. That's also when you start to position yourself as a go-to expert, because you become a full-fledged human and you're just giving all of those details and nuance. That's also going to help you stand out from everybody who's kind of just saying like the same thing on that surface level. So yes, it does take a little bit more work, but I really see that makes such a difference. So I hope that is valuable for you to hear. I hope those examples made sense, because I realize I'm able to see them visually and I'm trying to sort of condense them and speak them to you here. If you have questions around them, let me know. I know this is a topic that we've talked about in different ways all year, so I know it's a repeat for some of you, but I really hope hearing some of the nuance around this and workshopping it together is valuable for you, because again, this is a conversation I'm having over and over again with clients, and I'm just seeing what a difference it makes. And I did give you an absolutely shameless plug on my new strategy intensive, Your Marketing Multiplied, for good reason. I just really believe in it, and I just see how much right now in 2024, this is the thing every business needs at every stage, at every level to thrive. These are the conversations I'm having with my coach, with my peers. Again, I had multi-six-figure business owners book this, as well as brand new business owners. Yes, I still believe in the clarity around your business model, absolutely the mindset, and overall having a strategy and customer journey. But I am just seeing how if we are not drilled in with our messaging, with our positioning, and understanding how to apply that to our marketing and really specific there, and know how we want to show up, doing less better, right? This is not about doing all of the things. I've been on a tear about doing less better, and knowing what that means in terms of specifically what platform you're showing up, how you're showing up on that platform, with what message, what you're talking about, how you're talking about it. It's just really challenging in 2024 to get the results you want. And I'm not saying that to freak anyone out. I just want to normalize it for anyone. So if you're hearing this and you're like, that is the thing I need, I'm showing up with content. I'm like, of course, y'all here are great at content, but I could just really use those outside eyes, those expert eyes, and that support that knows how to help me take that message to the next level, that knows how to help me drill into those specifics, that strategic vulnerability, that thought leadership of mine, so I can really look at how to position my content that's already great, right? But how can I make it even better so I can stand out, so I can get noticed online, so I can build that actual know, like, and trust and teach people why I'm the best investment for them. So I am no longer one option among many. I am the go-to option, and how I can apply that to my marketing strategy. That is what Your Marketing Multiplied is for. I will drop a link for that. We opened up some more of my Fridays for these because I just want to help more of you with them. I usually take Fridays off from calls, but I would just love to get to help more of you because I know it's challenging out there. And so I'll drop a link for that with details. You can book a free consultation or a free mini coaching session if you just want to have that chemistry test to see if we're a fit to work together first. I hope you will take me up on that. Let me know if you have questions after this live stream, and then I'll be back next week. I've got another conversation, and I think it's either next week or the week after. I have an exciting announcement for y'all. All right, I love you all so much. Bye.